So I called Mr. Meese from Venture. He's out here someplace. And got me a hat. But now, it's a nice hat, and I don't want to get it wet, so I hope it doesn't rain. But it's good to be here with you. I'm going to take this back to Eastern Kentucky and catch more crappie with it. Lord, Wayne Munyer, you won't be able to count the crappie I'm going to catch wearing this hat. But it's good to be here with you, folks. I really mean that. I tell every group that. But occasionally I really mean it. And I mean it this evening, not because I just love to tell stories, but because I love to come down here, this beautiful part of the country, and fish and have a good time, and got a good crowd here this evening. Excellent crowd. I was out someplace last week making a speech. I was sitting up there at the head table. I looked out there in the audience, there were just about 3 people. I punched that old boy that invited me. I said, "You did tell him, didn't you, that I was coming?" He said, "No, but I'll find out who did." So it's good to be here and have a good crowd. And I wish I'd have put my coat on because I wanted to show you something. Because I can button it now for the first time in 25 years. I just lost 40 pounds. Thank you. But I guarantee you, after listening to this fine Cajun music before the sun comes up, I'll have me some red beans and rice. Yes. Yeah, I joined the Physicians Weight Loss Center because this is all I do, is eat and talk. That's it. And I'd gotten to the point where I had to wear a striped shirt so you could tell if I was walking or rolling. It's awful. And I tried all those fad diets. They don't work. For 6 months, I was on nothing but powdered food. Then got out in the rain and gained 12 pounds. It's discouraging. But I can't say the after-dinner speaking that I was doing, though, is what caused the weight gain. It started years ago, up there in the hills of Eastern Kentucky, where I grew up. When I was just a little bitty fella, my mama would pile food on my plate and say, "Eat, eat, they're starving in China." Well, I would just eat like crazy. And I was out like this making a speech here a while back. Stepped out of a shower, stark naked. That's the way I shower. And somebody put a full-length mirror on the inside of the bathroom door. Now I got to look at myself. And I said, how in the world is this helping the Chinese? So I knew something had to be done, so been dieting and started an exercise program. Now I'm not committed to exercise. Not really. But I got me one of those rowing machines. Put it down in the basement. I had it about 3 days. I put an outboard motor on it. I just sit down there, but having a great time. But it is good to be here with you this evening, talk a little while. You know, I love it here. I love it up in Eastern Kentucky. We're a little different up in Eastern Kentucky. We talk a little different, had a different sound. We think a little differently sometimes. Like my Aunt Mavis, my Uncle Arlo still live up there back in the hills. Got a little cabin there on the hillside. They were sitting out on the porch there the other evening, just kind of rocking. It was a real nice evening. She looked over at him. She said, "You know what I'd like to have?" He said, "What?" She said, "I'd like to have a big bowl of vanilla ice cream." He said, "That would be good." She said, "I'd like to have vanilla ice cream with chocolate syrup on it." He started getting up out of his chair. He said, "I'm going down the store and get us some." She said, "That's vanilla ice cream with chocolate syrup." He said, "Okay." She said, "Write it down." He said, "I don't need to write it down." She said, "With your memory, you need to write it down." Well, about 45 minutes he was back. He had 2 ham sandwiches. He handed her one of them. She looked in it. She said, "You dummy," said, "I told you to write it down." Said, "I wanted mustard on mine." So we think a little differently sometimes. We're good people. Just like my son, he's different. We think that's him. We don't know. Every now and then this Volkswagen full of hair comes by and gets money. I was talking to him the other day about staying in school. He's 18, says he has more information now than he knows what to do with. I said, "Son, you got to stay in school." He said, "Why?" I said, "Get you a good job." He said, "Why?" I said, "Work about 30 years?" He said, "Why?" I said, "Then you can retire and you don't have to work anymore." He says, "I'm not working now." Think differently. Oh, we've changed a lot up there, though. I grew up, I said East Bernstadt, Kentucky, but I was really born at Cornett, Kentucky. And one night, the little post office at Cornett went out of business. We woke up at East Bernstadt, Route 1. My sister said, "Do we live in town now?" No. Cornett, Kentucky. But we wanted our little community to progress, you know, and change. And I remember we met down there at the schoolhouse one night for 2 or 3 nights discussing a project. We wanted to get a traffic light. Somebody had been to Cincinnati and they'd seen one. They met down there about 3 nights discussing what color to make it. They're just getting ready to put it to a vote, and an old boy jumped up and said, "This is not going to work." They said, "Why?" He said, "We don't have an intersection." And we didn't at Cornett. But it's changed up there. Then I got a lot of fancy things. I was up there the other day. No boy came in and he said, "I just down to the sheriff's office." And said, "They got a machine down there. Can tell you right when a man is lying." Old boy said, "That's nothing. I married one of them." But it's changing up there. And I've seen a lot of change. I have. Just be 25 years old. That's the truth. I'm just 25, but I just started my 3rd term. And I'm enjoying it so much more. That first term was real nice. I was going to leave my footprints on the sands of time. Second term, I just trying to cover my tracks. Things change. But I'm not changing too much. I'm never going to change too much. I got me a nice car now, but I got a gun rack in it. My wife says, "Why do you carry that gun?" I said, "You can't tell when you're going to get out and run up on a brand new road sign." You all do that too, don't you? Yes, you do. I drove all the way down here. I saw them. I said, "There's another one." If these people from back home, they got to be from back home. I don't know why we do that. You put one up home at midnight, the sun won't come up on it. I went out the other night, my buddy, we got our limit. We got 3 slippery when wets and a falling rock zone. Oh, but all this change affects us, you know, like affects the way we communicate with each other. If you back up the eastern part where I'm from and you want to communicate with us, you need to understand we're good people. We just think differently. Like last week, they put up a sign in the post office. It said, "Man wanted for murder. 4 people applied for the job." One old boy said, "Yeah, I'll kill him." It's a different way of thinking. But it can happen any place. It happened to my wife and me just recently, this communication thing. We were out looking at some furniture. Fella showed us a nice living room suite. I said, "We like it, but I don't think we can afford it." He said, "You make 1 small down payment. You don't make another payment for 6 months. My wife jumped up and hollered, "Who told you about us?" He embarrassed me to death. But I saw it happen right there in Lexington the other day, where I live now. A friend of mine from East Bernstadt was down there, went in a pet shop, found himself a talking parrot. He'd always wanted one of those, and he bought that bird and took it home with him. About a week, he was right back at the shop. He told the fella, said, "My parrot quit talking." The fella said, "Well, I think I know the problem." Said, "Its beak. The part there on top, it hangs down. So that gets too long. It's hard for him to work it." So if you go back and file that back a little bit, said he can work it better and he'll talk. That old boy took off back home. He'd gone about 3 weeks. He's coming back down the street and the pet shop owner saw him. He ran out. He said, "How's that bird?" He said, "It's dead." He said, "I know what happened." He said, "You filed its beak back too much and it couldn't eat, right?" He said, "No." He said, "I think it's dead when I took his head out of the vise." Just a communication problem. Well, a lot of times, people don't say what they mean, you know. That causes a problem in communication. My wife's bad about that. Not saying what she means. We were at the grocery store the other night, and she was digging through this bin of frozen chickens. They never seem to have her size, you know. She was standing there holding about a 2.5 pounder, and the stock boy came by, and she said, "Son," said, "do these get any bigger?" He said, no, ma'am, they're dead. Just don't say what they mean. Sometimes we talk when we should be listening. My cousin Eldene's bad about that. Yeah. He got in trouble about that the other day. I love to go back up there and visit my cousin Eldene and his wife Eula Faye, their oldest boy Jimmy Lee. They proud of Jimmy Lee this year, senior in high school, for the first time. He was a junior for so long. And I went back down the other day, stopped in a little store where everybody hangs out. Eldene came in. He was bandaged from head to foot. Something had torn him up. I said, what in the world happened to you? Well, he does a lot of little odd jobs for people around there in the community. And he said a day or two before, a fellow had asked him to come out and look at his water heater. He said, I'll leave the basement door open. Said, I won't be able to be there. Said, I'll leave the door open. You just go on in and fix the water heater. He said, okay. He said when he stepped in that basement, first thing he saw over here to the right was a big old ferocious-looking dog, just teeth and eyeballs. You know? So he sidled way around that dog and got over and started work on that water heater. Said about the time he started to work, he heard something above his head. That wasn't it. Said he heard something above his head, and he looked up, and there on this perch was a big parrot just looking down at him, just watching him. He just kept working. A few minutes that parrot said, is that all you can do? He just ignored him, watched that dog. A few minutes said it again, said, is that all you can do? He didn't say anything, got his tools back in the box, and just about to get back past that dog again. And that parrot hollered at him again, hollered, is that all you can do? He said, is that all you can say? Parrot said, sick 'em. Well, we can solve those problems. We get together this way, working together, and getting together this way, having fun solves a lot of problems. We are problem solvers. That reminds me of Uncle Arlo again. As I said, he still lives back up there. He is a problem solver. Has a little bottling works. Yeah. Makes a little drink he calls summer vacation. Because about 2 drinks and school is out. The boys up there at home like to play a little game with it. They'll get out behind the barn, about 3 of them, and they'll sit around in a circle. And they'll take about a half pint and they'll pass it around for about 15 minutes. Then one will get up and leave, and the other 2 has to try to guess which one it was. It's strong. Someone told me the other day, said he ran off a new batch and he sampled it. You shouldn't do that. Make you feel about 10 feet tall and bulletproof. But said after sampling it real good, he went straight to town, rented an empty store, started charging people $0.25 apiece to come and see the animals and the snakes. Yeah, he's the only one seeing them. And the people got irritated. They said he's taking money under false pretenses. So they went to get the sheriff to go arrest him. Sheriff put his badge on and went after him. Got there, my uncle got talking to him, gave him a couple of drinks, and sold him half interest in the store. Because he's a problem solver. I used to think I was a problem solver when I taught up there at Eastern, I did. Yeah. I remember I got getting ready to go to school one morning. I was just finishing breakfast. My wife came to me. She said, now remember, said, we're moving today. And she had the address written on a little card. Boy, that insulted me. I threw that down. I said, you don't have to treat me this way. I'm a college professor. Well, sure enough, when I came home that evening, I couldn't get in the house. Door was locked. I looked in the window. The furniture was gone. I said, that's right. We were moving. Now, where was it? But I said, I can handle this. I'm a problem solver. I went out there and I sat down on the curb. In just a minute, a little girl was coming down the street. I said, say, little girl. I said, the people that lived here, do you know where they moved to? She said, come on, Daddy. Mommy said you wouldn't remember. Well, maybe we're not a problem solver. I don't know. But we learned years ago up there in the hills that the best way you solve problems by helping each other. No better way. They're helpful people up there. I remember when I was growing up, I just come back from a store where we traded a lot. We called it trading because a lot of times that's exactly what we did. We traded a dozen eggs to something, you know. And I was coming back down the road. I had me a new number 2 wash tub, 2 chickens, and a little pig. Had me a load. I started back up this little road, and this girl I knew down the road, she came along and started walking along with me. She said she didn't know. She was getting kind of dark there. She didn't know if she wanted to walk along there with me or not. I said, why? She said, well, we may get up the road here a little piece, and you might try to kiss me. I said, now, how could I kiss you with this tub and these chickens and pigs? She said, well, you put the chickens on the tub, and I can hold that little pig. So they'll work with you. And I like that. That's the way you solve problems. And I was back up there the other day, and that feeling is still alive and well, because I saw this old boy trying on the reading glasses. I was trying them on, and he was trying them on the other side of the rack. I looked around at him, I said, kind of hard to pick them out sometimes, isn't it? He said, it sure is, especially if you're trying to get them for somebody else. And on the way back out of town, I saw again that feeling is still alive and well. Because I stopped and picked up this old boy who'd run out of gas. He's walking along the road carrying about a 5-gallon gas can. I picked him up. He just riding along holding that can out the window, wasn't saying much. Finally looked around and said, you got a nice car? I said, well, thank you. Then I thought I'd have some fun. I said, well, I like it because, like if I want to run over somebody. I said, see that little round hood emblem? That's what I aim at 'em. I said, see that old boy walking along the road up there now? Watch me just get him. I took off like I was going to hit him, got up real close, and I swerved away. I heard something go, whop. He looked around and said, you missed him, but I got him with this gas can. They work with you. And each and every person has something to offer, so when you put it all together, oh, we can solve problems. There's enough ability right here in this audience. Solve any problem we've ever had, not we haven't even thought of yet. Because we're different, though. Each and every person has his own thing to offer. Like my wife and me, we totally different. She's smart and good-looking. We're different. She's a college professor. She's a philosopher. She really is. Did you ever watch one of them ponder? They're the ponderingest people I've ever seen in my life. Now, that's deep. That gets deep. See, I think, but not real deep. She ponders on things like, where did we come from? Where are we going? The meaning of life. And I'm thinking, how did they get that white stuff on the inside of Twinkies? It's on a different level. I kid her all the time, but she always gets even with me. She got a little mad the other day. She overheard me tell a crowd that I'd eaten so many TV dinners that every time I see aluminum foil, my mouth waters. And she told him she loved to live in the fast lane, but she's married to a speed bump. So she always gets even. We can solve these problems. I learned that I got to always have help, though. People have always had to help me, whatever I've had to do. I remember one time, finishing up at about the 5th grade. I wasn't over 15 years old. Little one-room school up there in the mountains. I came home one day. My mom and daddy made an announcement to me that represented the biggest change yet in my life. They said, tomorrow you're going to go to a new school. And that's when they told me I'd be transferring across the county there to large consolidated school, Hazel Green High School. I know some of you have heard of it. We were the Bullfrogs. Yes, we were. And I can prove it. Bullfrog. When they told me I was going to become a Hazel Green High School Bullfrog, I was proud. Hazel Green Bullfrogs won the state of Kentucky's basketball championship in 1940, and we're still talking about it. They said, you're going to get to ride a school bus, too. I'd never seen the inside of one. I walked about a quarter of a mile next morning to catch that bus. It pulled up, and that door opened, brakes went, psh. I said, golly. I talked that way then. I said, it's going to be all right. Got to ride it about an hour one way. Boy, and that bus pulled up in front of that big building. I stepped off. Those teachers met me at the door. They knew I had a lot of adjusting to do. They knew a lot about my background. They knew I came up poor. I'm not ashamed of it. When I was a little kid, my mama would take in washing and we'd keep it. It was hard times, man. You throw a bone out in the backyard, the dog would signal for a fair catch. It was rough. But they brought me along, and time I was about a sophomore in high school, I got kind of adjusted. That's where the biggest change had occurred. I was sitting in a world history class one morning. I was over there next to the windows, looking down over the hillside, daydreaming. That's what I did best in that class. I didn't know those people the teacher was talking about. I'd never seen them around East Bernstadt. I'd gotten there before I was ready. That's what the teacher said. Got so tired of the teacher telling my mother, Carl's not ready. I remember one time in English class, teacher said, Carl, quote some Shakespeare. I said, hark. That's all I knew. She said, who said it? I said, all of them. I just got in there before I was ready. But I was sitting there when the principal came in to make an announcement. An announcement that was going to change my life again. He said, we're going to start a football team at Hazel Green. I said, how many of you boys want to play? Well, I didn't know him better. Held up my hand. Weighed about 145 pounds then. Same height as I am now. I've always been this high. I wanted to be involved in sports. You can see why I didn't play basketball. I tried baseball. I was so uncoordinated I couldn't even clap for those who could play. I was on the track team, though, is what the coach called his miler and half-miler. I'd start the mile and go about halfway. He wasn't much of a track coach, though. It was his attitude. You've seen people that way, you know. He knew how to do it. It was his attitude. He'd get us out there before each meet. He'd say, well, you fellas get out there and keep turning left. Get back fast as you can. It's not a good attitude. Well, they told everybody that wanted to play together up the next day out behind the school there where we'd strip mined a little coal and just had smoothed the ground back down, and it was hard clay dirt and little sharp rock. We didn't have a blade of grass on it. We didn't know we were supposed to have grass. We'd never played football. I played in the first game I ever saw. I did. And it was a shock, buddy. We thought a football was a basketball that was laid out in the weather. Well, the coaches got us out there the next day, and they had us bunched up, and they were walking around us, looking at us, sizing us up, making decisions about us. Got to be careful about that. You can be wrong about people. They were wrong about me, because I heard them talking about me. One of them said, there's Hurley. Said he's about 5'6", weighs about 145 pounds, used to running. Said he'd be good at carrying the ball. Shows you where you can be wrong. Looked up at my buddy Cletus, law is big. We had taken feed store to weigh him. Big kid. They said, we're going to make a tackle out of him. He was my best buddy, but he wasn't wrapped real tight. His butter had done slipped off his biscuit. But he's one of the meanest kids, I'm not mean, but toughest kids I've ever seen in my life. I tell you what he did one day that helped him get a reputation of being so tough. He went home from school the same way every day. He'd go down to East Bernstadt, cut across a big field, go up through the woods to his house. On this particular day, he just hung around town till it got dark. He didn't care. But it was so dark out you couldn't even see your hand before you. And he was going across that field. He didn't know the fellow had gotten himself a new bull that day. That bull hit him, knocked him 50 feet out there, just rolled him up in the big ball. He jumped up, he ran back, he found that bull in the dark. He got it by the horns this way. He wrestled it all over the field, got it down, and beat the tar out of it. Because he's tough. Came to school the next day, had a couple of bruises. Someone asked him what happened. He said, I was going home last night. He talked that way too. So I got about halfway across the field out there, and somebody jumped on me. Said we fought all over that field. Said whooping him wasn't too bad, but like the never in the world got him off his bicycle. Well, they made a tackle out of him. And they got us all situated into our positions, and football practice was ready to start. If I'd known what a change my life was in for, I wouldn't have been there. I was going to carry the ball. Well, they snapped that ball the first time. They handed it to me. I took off around the right end as hard as I could go, got about to the line of scrimmage, and they hit me from 4 different directions. This cloud of dust went up. They got the ball and went right on down the field, and I just lay there. I wouldn't even raise my head up. I was catching on quicker now. The coach ran out and hollered, "Hurley, what's wrong?" I said, "Get down." He said, "Why?" I said, "They may come back." Oh, I was learning about football the hard way. I went over to him, and about a week into practice, I said, "Coach, I don't want to carry the ball." I'd figured out the ball was what was attracting him. I remember one day, a fella fumbled the ball. It was right there beside me on the ground. I just looking down at it. He said, "Pick it up." I said, "You pick it up. You dropped it." Well, they moved me over to the offensive line. I didn't have to carry the ball anymore, but I was still playing offense. I went to him about another week. I said, "Coach, I don't even want to be on the side that has the ball." I said, "You let me go in and help get it back. But when we get it, I'm getting off the field, okay?" He said, "All right." I became nose guard, defensive center, whatever you want to call it. All I had to do for the last 2 years was get out there in the middle of the line, squat down real low, and watch the ball. He knew that remembering was not one of my strengths either. So he'd tell me what to do before each play. It was always the same thing. He'd say, "Hurley." I'd say, "Yeah." He'd say, "Watch the ball. If he moves the ball, break his chin." He's a mean coach. But every now and then I'd hear the fellow's chin pop. And I'd have that good warm feeling you have when you know you've done your job right. But it does something to you when you get down in that line and you look across at that line, that fellow in front of you's a tiger and you're a bullfrog. You can say, "Ribbit," just loud as you want to. It won't scare anybody. But I did in that experience learn one of the greatest things I ever learned in my life about being a human being. See, that's a true story with the exception where Cletus fought that bull. Cletus exists, that bull part's made up. But the rest of it's just the way it happened. Yeah, he helped us learn, there's some things in this world we can't do very well. Other things we can. That's just the way it is. Took me a long time to learn that. Because I went through a long period of my life when I didn't want to be me. No, I accept me now. This is all I got. When I was a junior and senior in high school, I didn't want to be me. I wanted to be Elvis. I know we look alike. I can't help that. I'll still be in crowds sometimes. I can hear people say, "Is that Elvis?" Oh, I'd get up in the morning, I'd put on my skin-tight Levi's. In those days, we pegged the legs. That's what it was called. We'd buy those real Levi's for $3.98. That was a while back. Yeah. And we'd split the leg open and sew it back up so the bottom of the pant leg was about that big around. Pegging the legs. You remember that? Yeah. I had to grease my heels to get them on. Then I'd put me on a polo shirt, roll a pack of cigarettes up in the left sleeve. I didn't smoke. I wore the same pack of Camels for 2 years. Then I'd get in there and run out me about a half handful of Brill cream. I had hair all over top of my head. I did, I remember it. Well, anyway, I'd smear that all in there and swirl it around like Elvis and let it set up. Then I'd go out and get in my black 49 Ford with 3 white sidewall tires. Never had 4 at any one time. Terry cloth seat covers. Little dog up in the back window went like this. I'd go off into London, Kentucky, and I'd drive round and around the Dairy Dart drive-in restaurant. I'd have my arm out the window, my hand on the knob. I'd drive real slow, and I'd take off one spark plug wire so it'd run kind of rough. Those old boys up there'd say, "He got a 3/4 cam in it." Yeah. I didn't know what that was. Just knew I was supposed to have one. Trying to be somebody that I was not. Terrible feeling. You can't accomplish very much when you have those negative feelings toward yourself. I got to be 20, 21 years old, started noticing girls. Yeah, I was a little slow. Yeah. I couldn't ask a girl to go out with me, no way. First time I ever did that, it was a traumatic experience. Took me 6 months to get up my courage, and finally I went up to her, and I said, "Would you go out with me?" She said, no. I said, I don't blame you. Then I got to thinking, if she couldn't do better than that, I didn't want to go out with her. You can see what a shape you can get in. Negative thinking, but got to get rid of that and develop a good attitude toward yourself, toward others. Boy, I saw, though, my cousin Eldine, they misjudged somebody about as bad as I've ever seen happen. Thought this woman had a bad attitude when she didn't. I'll tell you what happened. I was up there visiting with him. He was driving. We were going down this big long hill. I don't remember where we're going. Just before we got to the bottom of the hill, there's a great big curve there at the bottom. We met a woman coming around that curve right on our side of the road. She was traveling at a high rate of speed. What in order to miss her? My buddy Eldine, cousin Eldine, whipped his car to the other side. She did too. He cut his car right back. She was right back over there with us. We were all tense for a while. They finally got their cars straightened up. They didn't hit each other, but just as they got even this way, she rammed her head out the window at him and hollered, "Pig!" Lord, that made him mad. He rammed his head out the window, looked back at her, hollered, "Sow!" Just as he turned his head back around, he hit a pig in the road and tore his car all to pieces. Pig is all she had time to say. And he misjudged her. We have to give everybody an opportunity. Attitude's extremely important. I knew two old boys years ago up there at home. Didn't have the best attitude toward their work. Well, I can understand that. I don't either. I quit 9 years ago. Highly recommend it. My daddy always told me, he said, "Son, I'm going to teach you to work." And I did. I worked hard when I was growing up. He said, "I'm going to teach you to work. If you ever get to the point where you don't have to, you can quit." And he would laugh. I quit. 9 years ago. But he was a hard worker. I remember one night we were just getting ready to sit down to supper. This old boy knocked on the door and he was needing some work bad. Looked pretty hungry. Dad said, "Well, come on in." Said, "Have some supper with us. Said, "You can help us pick corn tomorrow." I said, "Okay." Well, we had supper and went to bed pretty early, about 4 o'clock. He was rousting us out. Gave us just enough time to grab a cup of coffee and a biscuit. Loaded us on those wagons, and we headed to the cornfield. It was so dark you couldn't see your hand. You couldn't see anything. That old boy punched me. He said, "We going out there to pick corn?" I said, "Yes, we are." He said, "Well, tell me, why are we trying to sneak up on it?" But as I said, I knew these old boys back then didn't have the best attitude toward their work years ago. They decided it was time to get themselves a new mule, and they came down out of the hills there and came into London, Kentucky, county seat of my home county. Stock sales there to buy themselves a mule. They priced one. Old boy had a good one. It's $125. They just had $50. That was it. He said, "We're not going to be able to do any business." Said, "This mule's worth $125. That's what I got to have for him." Well, they turned to leave. And they hadn't been around much, you know. They looked out for the road there, and there stood a load of watermelons. And one of them said, what is that out there?" Fella saw his opportunity. He said, "That's exactly what you need." He said, "Those are mule eggs." Said, "If you had one of those, you could go back and hatch out your own mule." They said, "How much are they?" He said, $50. They got him a great big nice one. Put it up in the back of the pickup truck on some straw to protect it, and they headed back up that hillside road. One of them driving and the other one watching the egg. Well, it wasn't long before they hit a bump, and the thing bounced out, and he burst there on the side of the road, scared up a big long-eared rabbit. That rabbit took down over the hillside. You could just see its ears above the sage grass. One of them hollered, "Stop the truck! The mule has hatched out." They jumped out and they ran it over the hill, across the creek, up through the woods, through a briar thicket, just killing themselves. Finally, one of them sat down on a log. He said, "Let it go." Said, "I didn't want to plow that fast anyway." Oh, thank you. Oh, thank you. Yeah, every now and then you just run into those that don't want to plow that fast. This old world's going to continue to change. You know, we're going to have to adjust to it and a lot of problems. But when we get together this way and laugh, that solves a lot of problems. Oh, it's good for you. Every time you have a good hearty laugh, your brain releases that endorphin that gets into your bloodstream. It circulates throughout your body. And it's a natural painkiller. I don't know what I'm talking about here. would understand it's good for you. I know I'm going to keep laughing. People say, where do you get your humor? I look at people. I watch it. They are funny. They do funny things. I was driving down I-75 the other day up there close to Lexington. I saw this big billboard. It said, learn to read. I got to thinking, who'd they write that for? I could see my buddies from East Bernstein driving down through this, and I wonder what that said. So humor, it's all around us. I was at Bluegrass Field the other day in Lexington getting ready to take off. There's an old boy there in line in front of me. You could tell he hadn't been around much. Nothing wrong with that. He just hadn't done it. We all got to start sometime. Well, he was telling the lady he was going to put us on the plane. He said, I was going down to Atlanta, up to Detroit. He said, not going to be able to go to Detroit, just going to Atlanta and right back. So I won't get a refund on that other part of my ticket. Well, she knew how he paid for his ticket would have to do with how they refunded it. She said, how did you pay for your ticket? He looked at her like, that's none of your business. She said, no, it's important. He said, how did you pay for your ticket? He said, well, I sold a hog. Well, she couldn't laugh, but I did. I said, sold a hog. I was laughing, not at him. Laughing because we've all been there at one time or another. See, I live on an airplane now, but in 1971, I'd never seen the inside of one. And I went to work for the State Department of Education, the Bureau of Vocational Education here in the state. My boss called me in one day, said, you need to go to Atlanta for a meeting and right back. And I said to myself, hot dog, gonna get to fly on an airplane. I ran down to Capital Travel Agency, Frankfort, Kentucky, and I ran in, lady there behind the counter, I said, I want a round-trip ticket. She said, where to? I said, right back here. Yeah. That day they had to bring me along, see. We just take turns. And humor, it's all around us. I was landing the other day in a little old commuter plane in somewhere in Oklahoma in a windstorm. There's about 5 of us on there. We were holding on to anything you could hold on to. We scared to death. Found that old boy hit on about one wheel, bounced her over on another, and just kind of dribbled her down through there. We got stopped. We were glad to be down and be off, you know. But as we started to get off the plane, there was a lady in front of me. She looked about 90. She came up the aisle kind of slow there. The pilot was standing up front. She got right up to him. She looked at him. She said, excuse me, sir. He said, yes, ma'am. She said, are you the pilot? He said, well, yes, I am. She said, well, tell me. Did we land or did we get shot down? And everybody laughed but the pilot. She eased our pain with a little humor. See, humor knows no age, no age. You can be funny when you live. Bitty kids can be funny older all your life. You can be funny and enjoy humor. We had a wedding up home the other day. It's a real nice one. One of those where everybody agrees to it, you know. They're nice. Makes them run so smooth. It was a fancy wedding. Made tuxedos for everybody. Had this little fellow about that tall. He's going to bring the rings down the aisle on a little pillow. Had to make a little tuxedo for him. All the way down the aisle, he brought those rings on. He did a fine job. But under his breath, he was going, ah, rah, rah, rah. And after it was over, they said, you did a fine job. But said, what was that noise? He said, I was growling. They said, growling? He said, yeah, I was the ring bearer. It's what he thought he was. Because that's what we told him he was. Said, you gonna be the ring bearer, son? It knows no age. We got a nursing home up there. There's a lady there, we think she's about 112, we don't know. But she still got a twinkle in her eye. She came out the other day and sat down on the porch. This fella came out and sat down beside her. She looked over at him, she said, I bet I can guess how old you are. He said, I bet you can't. She said, I bet you $20. He said, okay. She said, you gotta do something. He said, all right. She said, stand up. He stood up. She said, take your clothes off. He didn't want to do that. This is $20. He wrapped them off. She started giggling. She said, turn around. He was turning around. She said, 92. He said, how did you know that? She said, you told me yesterday. So humor. It's all around us. I'm not done. I guess I am. Are we gonna get wet? Y'all have been real good. I'm going to the house. Thank y'all.